TorahCafe.com.
In life, we have to be able to recognize the difference between truth and falsehood, positivity and negativity, and freedom and slavery. The idea of holiness means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. What it means in Judaism, if someone wants to attain holiness, they want to attain godliness, it comes with self-abnegation. Because we have our desires, our emotions lead us in all sorts of directions. I want such and such. But the real us, deep down, the soul, wants godliness, wants permanence. And all the externalities and superficialities get caught up, and our emotions lead us over here and over there, trying to stray us into different other things. So when a person talks about holiness in the Jewish context, what we really mean is getting rid of the self, getting rid of our emotional drives, our impulses that lead us to the physical, that lead us to things that harm us, and that lead us away from God. Rabbi Victor Miller was once asked, how does a person attain holiness? And his answer was, they have to learn how to tell themselves no. That's the start. Meaning that we don't just give in to every drive and every lust and every passion that comes up. That we have direction and that we're on a mission and we have a purpose in this world. So spirituality is synonymous with self-abnegation. Getting rid of that ego and getting rid of those drives towards things that take us away from the path. In Judaism, there is something very definitive that makes something a holiday. How do we know what things in our collective history are meant to be celebrated as a holiday and those things that are not? Meaning we've had a lot of miracles happen to us as a people. What makes those things, certain miracles, holiday worthy that we celebrate every year, and other things, one-time events, things that we don't commemorate every year? And so on the Jewish calendar, when God designates a holiday, or sometime when the rabbis, the sages, institute a holiday to be made every single year, it's because the energy that was present on that first year, that first time, that same energy is present every single year when the months turn, when we reach that point in time again. Time in Judaism is not linear. We're not celebrating an event that happens 3,000 years ago. Instead, we're celebrating circular time, meaning that when we reach a holiday, a Pesach, a Shavuos, a Sukkot, a Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, a Pesach, we are re-experiencing the energy that took place that very first time. We have a mitzvah on Pesach, and truly we have a glimmer of that every day, but really the biggest time that it shines is on Pesach. The mitzvah is to see yourself, each one has to see themselves as if they personally are coming out of Egypt. See yourself as if you're actually coming out of Egypt. Okay? The Haggadah tells us very clearly that that's supposed to be our goal as well. So even if we were all wise, people of wisdom, scholars, we would still have the obligation, Passover night, to discuss the Exodus. And the question is, why is that? If we know the story, we heard it last year, we saw the video, we read the book, whatever it is, we know what happened, why is it that we have to every single year on Passover tell this story again? And the reason is because we're not only telling the story, we're not recounting an event that happened 3,000 years ago. We're reliving an event. The leaving of Egypt, the exodus, the personal exodus, is happening to each and every one of us come Pesach. Come that night, we are going out of Egypt. Now, what does it mean to go out of Egypt? We're supposed to envision ourselves as if this Passover, I'm going out of Egypt. What does that mean? Has anyone ever been to Egypt?
Yes.
Okay, we have one. We've seen pictures. Maybe most of us, whatever we saw on our trip there, we saw a limited area of Egypt. How are we supposed to envision ourselves? What does it mean to envision yourself as if you're going out? How do you do this mitzvah? So Egypt is not only a geographical location on the map. It's not just a place in East Africa that the Jews left 3,000 years ago. Egypt is also a state of mind. In fact, in Hebrew, the way that you say Egypt is Mitzrayim, which is related, and many of who are in this class have heard the word before, it's related to the word Meitzarim, which means a limitation. Those things that confine us. It's what I like to call the inner Egypt. The Egypt within. So it's a state of mind, it's a state of being. Egypt, the inner Egypt, are those things that enslave us. Those things that keep us confined. Those things that keep us from expressing and being and living who we really are, fulfilling our purpose, being all that we can be, showing our true self, showing our uniqueness. We're enslaved, though. We sometimes are not in control of our own self. Many of us realize that we're physically enslaved. Maybe we don't have taskmasters over us, but how many times does a person eat a full meal and they're so full, they, unnotch their belt, they're like that full, and all of a sudden, out comes the cake, right? Out comes the chocolate cake, put it out, and you can't help but taking a bite, 2 bites maybe the whole thing. So we see that who's in control over there? Is it us or is it the cake? So we have times in our life where we're physically enslaved. And that extends to not just food, that extends to many areas in our life. Money sometimes can lead us in the wrong direction. How many times is a person watching television or watching a movie? Not that I recommend either one of those, but how many times is a person doing that and something more important comes up? The kids want to play, kids want to talk, someone comes to the door, there's an important phone call, but you can't take it, you can't pull yourself away because, my show is on. Oh, the movie's on, it's getting so good. And we can't pull ourselves away. So who's in control over there? The movie, the television, the internet, or you? Don't have to answer. So we have physical enslavements in our life. We're also psychologically enslaved. I love a quote from Carl Jung in his book, The Undiscovered Self. He says, "Where the many are, there is security. What the many believe must of course be true. And what the many want must be worth striving for and necessary and therefore good." The biggest form of slavery today is conformity to Western society. We feel that we have to fit in and do what everybody else is doing and think what everybody else is thinking. Be a part. You don't want to be the person who thinks differently than everybody else. We have groupthink mentality. Everybody believes one way. Everybody looks at things one way. Everybody approaches life and has the same American Western goal. The purpose of life is to have a 2-car garage, 2.5 kids and a dog, and you have a happy life. That's what's perfection. One of the reasons that 70% of our population is on some sort of upper or downer is because we recognize deep down that our life, our inner self, doesn't jive with society. It's not what we really want, but it's what everybody else does, and that's what's been told to me that's successful, and that's what's been told to me what my purpose is, and that's been told to me what's good and what's right and what's proper. But it doesn't jive with me. And so we get depressed. We need to take an upper. Something to make us feel not depressed. That I haven't achieved this status or whatever in society. Or that I look at things differently. Or that I like to associate with a different type of people. Or I like to dress a certain way. Nope, you better get your hair cut a certain way. Because that's the style. You better wear these kind of clothes. Because that's the style. So everything, physically, psychologically, emotionally, we are enslaved constantly. We don't even realize it. When choosing Torah, when a person does the right thing based on the Torah's perspective, we look at the world through the Torah lens, that's a way that a person can really exercise free choice, to get in touch with their deep down self. Otherwise, we're enslaved to the world. It's either the world vision of how to live or the godly vision of how to live. Either one, but the choice has to lie somewhere. Freedom also doesn't necessarily mean comfortable. There's a lot of people who are complacent in their slavery. In fact, the Jewish people in the original Exodus were very complacent. They weren't necessarily in a rush to leave. In fact, the only reason that they left in such a haste, that they didn't have enough time to bake the matzahs, was because they were running from themselves. If they would have stayed in Egypt any longer, they would have been completely complacent in their slave life. Many people stay in abusive relationships because they're comfortable there. They're used to it already. So freedom is not necessarily synonymous with comfort, with what makes you feel comfortable. Sometimes when we're in a state of exile, when we're in a state of slavery, we look at freedom as slavery, and we see our slavery as freedom. Just like in this world of falsehood, many people look at truth as false, as bad and false, and they look at falsehood as true and worth living towards and worth aspiring to. What freedom really means, it's understanding that I don't have to let my emotions rule over me. I don't have to let society dictate over me. I can be my own person. I can be the real me. And I can shine the way that I'm meant to. Before we get into the seder and the spiritual journey that it represents, we're going to take a little backtrack and understand a very special Kabbalistic number. There's a number in Kabbalah, the number 15, that's seen many times in our Jewish literature, in Torah texts, that 15 is a recurring symbol of the staircase of man. Meaning, when you hear 15, it's our ascent, it's our climb, it's our moving up, ascending, spiritually. It's a number that typically symbolizes the pinnacle of growth and ascent. Perhaps one of the reasons why 15 is like that special number is brought down by the Maror in his Gvuras Hashem, where he explains that this world and the world to come were created using God's name, Yud, with a Hey. The gematria, the numeric value of that name, a Yud and a Hey, is 15. So since this world and the world to come were created with that name, which is equivalent to the number 15, that we see 15 as a number, a recurring number of attachment, of closeness, of ascending the stairway in closeness and in purity to God. During the flood, the number 15 is found symbolizing the apex of purity. The flood waters, how high did they reach? 15 cubits over the highest mountain. The waters prevailed and purified the world for a total of 150 days, 10 units of 15. The area of each floor of the ark that Noah and the animals were on was 300 cubits by 50 cubits, totaling 15,000 square cubits. The Jewish people are constantly compared to the moon. One of the reasons that our calendar is based on the lunar cycle is because the Jewish people, just as the moon is a reflection of God's light, just as the moon is a reflection of the sun's light, so too the Jewish people's specialness, their light, their energy, is a reflection just because of God's influence on them. There's 30 days in a lunar month, which means when does the moon reach its when is a moon full moon? On the 15th of each Jewish month. That's one of the reasons why, by the way, most of our holidays are on the 15th of the month. Because when the moon is at its strongest, when the light of the moon is shining at its strongest peak, the Jewish people are at their strongest at point of that month. Because the Jewish people are compared to the moon. As the Jewish people developed to their climax in history, there were 15 generations from Abraham, the first Jew, until the temple was built in the times of Solomon. 15 generations. The climbing, the ascent, reaching the pinnacle. God appeared to our forefathers 15 times. The lifespan of the patriarchs, meaning when was Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob all living at the same time? That lasted for 15 years. The Sfas Emes says that the formation of the Jewish people came from the 3 patriarchs and the 12 tribes, totaling 15. So we see that 15 is sort of a magic number, so to speak, in climbing the staircase, in ascent, in reaching that level of godly connection. The model for upward and spiritual progression was also found in the 15 steps in the temple that went from the women's courtyard to the Israelite courtyard. 15 steps. On those 15 steps, the Levites would stand and sing the 15 songs of ascents that are numbered in the Psalms. 15 steps, the 15 steps of ascent also find remnant in the prayers that we say on a daily basis. Take the morning prayers, for example. When we wake up in the morning, there's 15 blessings of gratitude that we say when we wake up in the morning. The prayer Yishtabach, which is towards the middle of davening, has 15 expressions of praise. The first 2 paragraphs of the Shema have 15 verses. And then we say this paragraph, Emes, V'yatziv, V'nachin, and 15 praising words that extol God. The priestly blessing, which is the conduit for bringing down Hashem's blessings into the world, has 15 Hebrew words. So this number 15 in Kabbalistic jargon is synonymous with a journey, ascending, climbing the human staircase to godliness, to purity. It's no surprise that in the seder there are 15 steps that are laid out for our transformation. When we begin the seder, we're in our own spiritual Egypt. But as we move through each of the 15 steps of the seder, we reach spiritual freedom. If we take these symbols to heart and to mind, if we apply them, if it's not just, all right, let's just zip through this, when's the fish coming? If we think about what we're doing and live with it and try to not just ingest our food, but ingest the godliness that it's symbolic of, we will be able to experience our own spiritual freedoms as well. When we recall in the Haggadah, in the Seder, the journey, the national development that the Jewish people underwent, and we sing it through the song Dayenu, each step of the way. If God would have done this for us, and not that for us, Dayenu. Then we say, if He would have done this for us, and not that for us, Dayenu. And we go through 15 steps of which God did for us, our national development. So all our growth, all of human ascent is found and oftentimes symbolized by the number 15. So we're going to now explore together, briefly, each of the 15 steps, what they are symbolic of, and then hopefully, when we get to them at the Seder, we will have a little bit more depth to the meaning of our Passover. So the first thing that we do is Kiddush. Kiddush, we begin the Seder, we make Kiddush, we sanctify the day. Kiddush means holy, sanctify. We sanctify the day. Holiness means special, unique, set apart. The first step to our own spiritual freedom is to recognize that you are Kiddush. You are holy. You are sanctified. You are set apart. You are unique. You're special. If we base our self-worth, and oftentimes we do this, we base our self-worth on our possessions or on our accomplishments, we lose our uniqueness. I see many times people towards the end of their life, they're not able to do as much as they were always able to do. And sometimes people use the term, they've lost their quality of life. Because the way that we talk about life in America and the worth of life in America is based on what you can accomplish. So if the person can't accomplish very much, so to speak, anymore, their quality of life has been diminished. Not the quantity of things that they're able to do, but their quality of life has diminished. And that's completely erroneous from a Jewish perspective. From a Jewish perspective, the person remains unique. The person remains special. From the first breath of air that they take as a baby until the last breath that they take when they've reached their time, every moment is special. Every bit of life is valuable. Quality of life never changes. The quality of you as a being, as an individual, never changes. So we have to see ourselves in that light. We have to look at ourselves the way God looks at us. As unique, as special. The fact that we wake up in the morning means that we have a purpose here. We have a reason that God is keeping us alive. God's keeping us here. We have purpose. Your specialness is still there. So the first step in spiritual growth is recognizing that you are deep down a holy being, a godly being, a person created in the image of God. And the first step of the spiritual growth would be to want to live according to that. To want to live the holy life. To want to be in touch with that soul, with that real inner you. When we do the Kiddush, in order to tap into that energy, and in truth, when we drink each of the 4 cups of wine that we drink, in order to tap into that energy, we have to drink at least 3 ounces right? We do it leaning as a sign of freedom. And we have to drink most of the cup. So use a small cup if you're using one that's much bigger. Don't use one that's much bigger than 3 ounces. You gotta drink 3 ounces, so just stick to the smaller cups. I always like to compare the way in which we have to do things in order to access that godly connection on Passover. With the leaning and the drinking, you have to do a certain amount in a certain amount of time, and everything has to be perfect. Everything has to be all lined up in order to tap into that energy. I like to compare it to television in the 80s. If you had a television in the 1980s, you had those like bunny ears on top, the antennas. And you always had to, we didn't have there was no satellite television, there was barely cable television. It was really what you could pick up from those antennas. And sometimes, depending on where you lived or whatever, you had to put some foil on, and you had to, get a hanger and hold it, and you had to bend yourself properly. And if you were holding the hanger and holding the other side properly and leaning at the same time, then the connection was made. Then you could watch the show that you wanted to watch. And the more you would lean and the more you would turn and the way you would balance yourself, that would be the clearer connection. So on Passover, it works very similarly. If we want to tap into the unique godly connection accessible through, for example, through the wine, we got to make sure that we lean, got to make sure that we drink the proper amount, the proper amount of time, and we'll see that also plays true in matzah as well when we get there. So the first step, Kiddush, recognizing the holiness, the inner holiness within each and every one of us. Second thing that we do is Urchatz, which means the hand washing. The first hand washing. This is hand washing that we do in order to eat the karpass, the vegetable. Hand washing symbolizes cleansing and renewal. Our hands represent our actions, what we do, what we're able to accomplish. The first thing in holiness is that our actions must be pure and holy. Not just as we want holiness and we want spirituality, but that our actions should relate that. Our actions should be expressions of that. Not to be a godly person in the synagogue or a godly person in your thoughts, but your hands, your actions do differently. So we have to have that purity of hands. We wash our hands. We have to embrace the teachings of the Torah, its commands, pursuing that which Torah tells us is good for us, for part of our prescription, and abstaining from those that the Torah it frowns upon. We not only have to want holiness, in other words, but our hands, our actions must be holy. So the first step is Kiddush, where we sanctify, we recognize our inner holiness. And the second step is that we channel that holiness into our actions. And what is the next thing that we do? Karpass. Karpass is the vegetable. Now, according to halacha, according to Jewish law, a person can use any vegetable that you make adama on, which anything grows from the ground. Our custom, is to use onion or a potato. Okay, many people use parsley. Okay, there's no right or wrong. It's based on your custom, as long as it's one of the adama things that we make the blessing of adama on. So the karpas, the vegetable, is meant as an appetizer. It's dipped in the salt water, and that salt water symbolizes the tears that the Jewish people experienced. In a spiritual pursuit, in a spiritual journey, in climbing the spiritual staircase of our life, okay, we get a taste of godliness, which is what the appetizer is. We get a taste of godliness, but to really get to the main course, sometimes it takes tears. It comes through hard work. It comes through sweat. It comes through toil. If a person feels godliness and spirituality, it's coming very easy, we have to sometimes question, what is that feeling? Is it just a good feeling? Or is this holiness? Is this spirituality? Is this godliness? Because everything in life that's worth pursuing, anything true, it takes hard work. And the same thing applies with godliness as well. We're not just looking for good feelings when we're on a spiritual pursuit. We're looking for the real thing, the permanent thing, the godly thing. And that takes hard work. We've got to work on ourselves. We have to pray, concentration, do the mitzvahs with extra zest. It's hard work sometimes. Sometimes I'm not in the mood. But if we want the real thing, it comes with hard work. So that's what the Karpass, dipped in the salt water, comes to remind us of. Then we have Yachatz. We break the middle matzah. We break the middle matzah. Matzah that we're eating that night symbolizes poor man's bread. So we break it in half that it should look like a poor man's bread. Half. You have like half a piece of bread. Half a piece of matzah. There's a saying amongst the sages that there's nothing more whole than a broken heart. That doesn't mean that a person should be depressed. It means that a person has feelings of remorse and humility. The voice of a broken heart yearns for help. It yearns for something more. It says, I'm not willing to accept things as they are. I have remorse about the things that I've done. I feel broken, but I want to be better. I want to grow. I want that tomorrow should be different than yesterday. I'm on the journey. Not that we feel broken and depressed. To the contrary, that our brokenness about our past leads us to extra zest in the future. I'm not complacent where I am now. I want more. We break the middle matzah, our hearts, subjugating our hearts and our deeds to Hashem. That it's not about me. It's about God. Matzah in general, the concept of matzah, represents the concept of humility. The difference between bread, a loaf of bread, and matzah, what's the difference? Besides taste, right? One is flat, it hasn't risen. The only difference is air. The bread that has baked is all inflated. That's symbolic in our life of our inflated ego. Matzah is the bread of self-abnegation. It's 1 week, 8 days, where we refrain from the inflation of self, the ego that we are constantly involved with all year round, and we stick with matzah, the egoless, the airless bread. So matzah represents humility and self-abnegation. It's broken. Why do we break the matzah in the middle? That this self-abnegation itself, that the humility itself, doesn't become a means of expression of self. What's that, Ron? What's that word that you use about the spiritual narcissism? You ever hear a person who likes to show off that they're so spiritual and show off that they're so holy? So our humility should never be something that we're showing off. So we eat the matzah to show the humility, and then we break that middle matzah to show that the humility is humble for the sake of humility. That we're on this track for the godly track, not as an expression of our ego. I'm not going to play the humble card in order to really show how great a guy I am. So that's Yachatz. And that's the fourth step on our spiritual journey that night, of breaking the chains of our inner Egypt. Then we have Maggid. And that's that really long section where everyone's ready to eat already, and we tell the story. And we start with our forefathers who were slaves in the land of Egypt, and we go through the whole thing. We go through all the plagues and how embittered their lives were until they're finally free. And then we finally start eating and whatever. But that story, the Maggid, is telling over the story. The Noam Elimelech says that whenever a Jew needs rescue and divine assistance from their enemies, okay, he should retell the miracles about Egyptian punishment. When we tell over the story, we are expressing our release from our spiritual bondage, our spiritual enslavement, our inner Egypt. The major holiday theme of Passover, what's Passover called in Hebrew? It's Pesach, right? That actually is a combination of two Hebrew words. Pe-sach. Pe means mouth. Sach means to speak. Pesach, the mouth that speaks. The big mitzvah of the holiday of Pesach is about the mouth speaking, is about telling over the story. One of the roots of exile for ourselves is the feeling that we can't express ourselves. Talking to people, letting out our feelings, speaking, is a means of self-expression. When a person feels that they can't express themselves, that's one of the main symptoms and causes of an inner Egypt, of feeling alone, of feeling trapped. Speech is a tool for building and construction in which we overcome our inner Egypt. Pharaoh, Paro, can be divided also into two Hebrew words. Ra, the bad mouth, right? The evil mouth. When we talk about things, when we express ourselves, we can either be relating it in the godly way or in the Paroi way, the enslaved way. We can express ourselves towards the Western, the conformity, the world conformity, or the godly confirmation. When we speak about our aspirations, we tell people about the things that we want to do, that we want to accomplish. When we voice our goals, that increases the likelihood of them actually being accomplished. The next step is rachza, which is washing with a blessing. This is the washing that we do before the meal, the washing that we do before we start with the matzah. The first washing that we did, the second step, right, the Urchatz, was a preparation, was just a superficial, a preliminary washing. The first washing prepares us mentally to have these new ideas, this new perspectives, this idea of changing from freedom, from slavery to freedom. The second one that we do with a blessing prepares us for implementing and experiencing, for taking it to heart. Not just making these nice theoretical concepts, but applications in our life. The first 5 steps that we've talked about are mainly mental and verbal. Now the second half, when we start the meal, this is all about experiencing it, living it. It's not just some nice theoretical jargon that we can philosophize with our friends about. This is a way of life, something that I'm ready to embark on, something that I'm ready to live by. I don't want to just think about going out of my inner Egypt. I want to leave my inner Egypt. I want to get out of those things that confine me. Not just think about it. Not just philosophize about it or theorize about it. I want to live it. I want to feel it. I want to be it. I want to get out of Egypt. The next thing that we do is motzi. Make a motzi. Blessing on the matzah. We acknowledge God for what we have. Its acceptance, its openness. We make hamotzi. We hold the matzah in the 10 fingers of our hand. It reminds us that even though it was human hands that put this together and baked it, that it's a gift from the Creator of all life, that everything that we do, all of our self-development is in partnership with Hashem, with God. God plays a key role, and acceptance and knowledge of that God plays a key role in our self-growth. He's there to help us. He's there to be with us. So the motzi, the blessing that we make, acknowledges that, or should remind us that God is with us. Then we eat the matzah. Okay? Key pivotal point in our journey. The matzah, which is bittul, which is self-abnegation, which is humility, okay, is consumed. By eating the matzah, we assume its qualities. Its quality, you are what you eat. So if you eat matzah, which embodies humility, which embodies self-abnegation, you take upon its qualities. The Rebbe Maharash, the fourth Lubavitcher Rebbe, said that eating matzah is like eating godliness. On the first night of Pesach, matzah is called the bread of faith. And the second night of Pesach, it's called the bread of healing. It brings healing to those who eat it. Matzah is brought down in different places, that the letters matzah, mem, tzadik, hey, stand for, or can stand for, mikol tzara hatzilenu. God save us from all distress. God will save us from all distress. By ingesting that food into our system, by making that the you are what you eat, making that a part of our life, there's no doubt that the faith and the humility and the healing which matzah represents will become a part of our active daily life. Eating matzah helps us achieve true freedom, integrating material with the physical. The material with the spiritual, the body with the soul. Takes the spiritual principle and ingesting it becomes part of our physical being. The book, the work, the sefer, Tiferet Shlomo, brings that eating matzah has the same power as bringing a sacrifice. The Divrei Yecheskel and Parshas Bo brings the Zohar, which explains that eating matzah prevents harsh judgment on Rosh Hashanah. There's many advantages, spiritual advantages, brought about through eating this unleavened bread on that night. The right time, the right amount, the right way on that night causes all these infinite blessings. It's a mitzvah that we only get to do 1-2 times a year, right next to each other, the 15th and the 16th of Nisan. It's our only opportunity. It's right in the middle of the 15 steps. It's the 8th step, matzah. It's the middle, showing how pivotal and central a role humility plays in our self-growth. Matzah, it may be the most important part of the whole Pesach experience. Eating matzah that night by the seder is the most important part, and the part that it's so important to make sure that everybody does properly. So I just want to say in parentheses some of the highlights, things to make sure to do at your seder. Matzah has to be eaten after dark. Okay, I know in America, especially now with daylight savings time, some people have dinner early, they do the seder early, but matzah has to be eaten after dark. So whenever, I don't want to cause any family friction, if you have your seder early, talk to your local rabbi about maybe how to deal with your specific case, but at least to eat matzah after dark. Even if it's after the seder, and if it's whatever, when you get home, okay, eat matzah after nightfall. Next Monday night and next Tuesday night. Right? Both nights of the seder. When we do it, we have to have a kezayis, at least, which if you're eating the shmura matzah, and if you'd like shmura matzah, you can have after the class. On a shmura matzah, it's about half a matzah. Okay? And on the machine matzahs, if you're eating a machine matzah, it would be a full piece. I know by some seders in some homes, they break it up, and everyone ends up eating like this little smidgen of matzah, and you end up putting butter on it and whatever, it becomes the whole thing. But eat one plain piece of matzah. Whatever else you do, that's progress, not perfection. But everyone should please make sure to fulfill the greatest mitzvah of Pesach, eating the matzah properly. We also do that leaning. Right? Back to our television analogy, 80s television. We have to lean. Or after dark, okay, eating a kezayis, right, half a shmura matzah, leaning when we do it. And we also have to do it within around 5 minutes, between 5 and 7 minutes. So all these details, I would take notes, but it's just have in mind piece of matzah, after dark, and leaning. right? And you should get it right. It's a tremendous blessing. Why miss out on the godly energy that matzah embodies when it's so simple to do relatively, right? Just after dark, make sure we're leaning and have enough of it. Okay? Very simple. Okay, maror. After we eat the matzah, we eat the maror, the bitter herbs. Everyone's favorite part, right? The bitter herbs, bitterness teaches us about growth. We dip the bitter herbs into the chareses. The chareses is like that apple. Some people use also like cinnamon. It's a mix of a bunch of different things. Nuts, right? Some people use nuts. And it's sweet. So what we do is we take this bitterness and we dip it into a little sweetness to kind of nullify, or not nullify, but neutralize the bitterness. When we in life have the need to feel bitterness, its purpose is not the bitterness in and of itself. It's to teach us a greater freedom. Right? Meaning, even those things that are challenges in our life, even those things that we find difficult, that have bitterness, they're meant to be a stepping stool. They themselves are a healing. That through the bitterness, through the challenge, through the squeezing, we come out with greater vigor and greater enthusiasm. It says that in Egypt, the more that the Jewish people were oppressed, the more they grew. So sometimes through the harshness, through the challenge, we're able to achieve much more than we would have without the challenge. There's a story about the healing power of Maror as well. Maror, the bitterness. There was a chassid. He was from the din of he was a din of chassid. Okay, so one time he was diagnosed with a hopeless case of pneumonia. We're talking early 1800s. Diagnosed with an incurable diagnosis of pneumonia. His lungs were completely full of mucus. So after he got this diagnosis from the doctor, there's nothing left that we can do. He went to the Divrei Chaim, the Sanzer Rav, who lived at that time. And he asked them that when it comes to Maror, this Pesach, which Pesach was coming up, when it comes to Maror, the bitter herb, which is challenging to eat enough when you're not sick, he asked the Divrei Chaim if it was necessary that he eat a whole kazayas, a lot of Maror, of this bitter herb. And so the Divrei Chaim told him, not only should you eat it, but you should make sure to eat the full amount. Eat your Maror, because the Maror has healing power. So this chassid, he left the Sanzer Rebbe, the Divrei Chaim. He left him. He said, he was thinking to himself, he said, I know from my past, I know that matzah has healing power, but I've never heard that the bitter herbs have healing power as well. So whatever. So he came to the seder, when the seder came, and he puts a little bit of maror in his mouth. And he starts coughing. He starts coughing, and his face is turning red, and he thinks that he's dying. So he thinks to himself, well, at least if I'm going to die, I might as well go out with a bang and I'll do a mitzvah. Right? So he stuffs more maror, say that 10 times fast, in his mouth, right? And his bitterness, and he's coughing, and his face is turning red, and he's throwing up, he's spitting up, it's like until he finally faints. So they call a doctor in to examine him, and through all of the coughing, and through the spitting up, he had coughed up all the mucus that was on his lungs, and he lived many more years. So sometimes what appears to be a curse in our life, what appears to be hurtful and painful and a bitter time, is actually a healing experience. Every time we get a fever, know that the reason that our body temperature rises, why does our body temperature rise? We feel it as a curse. Because when our body temperature rises, it kills bacteria. Just remember that. We look at, I have a fever. It feels like a curse. It's the worst feeling in the world. But know that same thing that we perceive as a curse is actually a blessing. And that's what the bitter herbs the Maror comes to remind us of. Which is related to the next thing that we do on the Seder plate, the Korech sandwich, which is when we take the matzah and we make a sandwich of bitter herbs. We take the bitter herbs on the inside, put the matzah on the outside, and we make a delicious sandwich. It's maror wrapped with matzah. The bitterness is concealed in the liberation. Matzah represents liberation. Matzah represents freedom. Maror represents bitterness, challenges, hardship. We can't always perceive it, but the bitterness of exile, our challenging times in life, is all orchestrated by Hashem for our best. True growth is an integration of recognizing opposites in our life. Knowing how to deal with the good times and the bad times. The physical and the spiritual. The ups and downs. What's the symbol in the hospital of a living person on the EKG? Living person, ups and downs. What if if everything is the same? You're not a living person. Ups and downs are part of life. True self-growth and spiritual attainment is realizing how to capitalize out of life. That life is part of ups and downs, but realizing that even those downs are a means of connecting to God. Next step of the Seder is Shulchan Aruch, the meal. This is step 11, almost there. This is the meal. So after 10 steps of training ourselves how to integrate the spiritual freedom into our material lives, now comes our first test. We're presented with food, our biggest challenge, right? Eating eating the meal, a material meal in a new way, with godly intent. Now, here, we have these philosophical ideas, leaving your inner Egypt, living in the physical world, but embracing it through a spiritual perspective. Okay, here's your test. Eat your meal. But don't do it in an indulging way. Don't do it in a way where you're only focused on self-gratification. Do it in a way where you're doing it as a means of mitzvah. This is a command. This is a way in which we're celebrating Pesach today. This is a way in which we're celebrating God today. Not just self-indulgence. The Kuznetzer Maggid said that shulchan, table, the Hebrew word for table can mean table when it's eaten for godliness, when it's eaten for godly purpose, is a table. It's like a royal table. Or those same letters of the word shulchan, when eaten for self-indulgence, only for physical desires, the word shulchan, the letters are rearranged to the word lenachash, for the snake. We either uplift the food that we eat, or we send it down. Send it downstairs. Next is tzafon, the afikomen. Tzafon means hidden, or north. The afikomen is eaten as dessert. It's not sustenance, but done for pleasure. We should recognize in our own life and be able to see the service of God and the godly hand hidden in every part and every aspect of our life. Beirach, the grace after meals, when we're aware that the source of our self-growth is Hashem, and instills a much more profound pleasure and accomplishment in our life. When we have gratitude, when we have gratitude, thankfulness for the things that we do have, that instills that much more pleasure in everything that we pursue in our life. We have to have the gratitude. And not last yet, Hallel, that's the reciting of the Psalms. Hallel is when godliness, Hallel also means to shine. When a person looks at the world in this new perspective that we've achieved through accomplishing the steps of the Haggadah, we will see and sing. Godliness will shine himself, into the world around us. When we look at something, it won't just be, I'm looking at a table, or I'm looking at a chair, or I'm looking at another person. That person will radiate, it will shine godliness. Everything will be an expression of Hashem. Everything will be an expression of the way in which we connect to our Creator. And last but not least is Nirtza, which is the last step of the Haggadah, which isn't done with any sort of action. It's the promise that God has accepted our service. And this is what I would like to deem the sense of connection. When a person pursues a godly life, when a person embarks to see godliness, to live godliness, to act upon godliness, to pursue a Torah life, to pursue mitzvahs, and to do them in their best way, the confidence and the faith that it will be accepted by Hashem, that it will be accepted by God. There's sometimes something that we're looking for that's beyond words. The true thing, the true idea of being bound with God is not summed up by a feeling. It's just the knowledge, the experience of connection. I know that I'm connected. Finish this week before Pesach getting rid of all the internal and external property of physical and spiritual chametz that we have. Get rid of all the chametz products, the arrogance, the air, the ego. So when we search and scour our house for all the physical chametz, we should also be scouring our soul, scouring our emotions, scouring ourselves to get rid of all the chametz that has been built up. Think about ways this week to implement the aforementioned steps to freedom. Be sure to carry out the mitzvahs of the seder in order that these unique energies that are embodied in each of these steps of the seder, in particular matzah, that they should become a part of our being. Don't miss out on the opportunity and have a very kosher and happy Passover.